anyone else wants to.
Is the table discussion that we were having, the lengthy table and the original, like, is that part of, is the assumption that that's also, or is it more, a stream, like, are we pulling up that again and trying to consolidate the lengthy table that was the original plan? And, or is it more in this format where the original listing stays in there, but we're putting emphasis or, prioritization of timing or status report on some of the.
I think in my mind anyway, when we took those 156 action points and I think that was really a first step in terms of consolidation, and then making it much more transparent and legible in terms of just a quick glance.
So you would like that to be part of the addendum?
Yeah,
Okay.
at least the status update, and then maybe an addendum in terms of integrating new priorities, and then having a much more simple list that still captures as much as.
And that was part of my thinking, just looking at the original plan, as I was a little bit concerned about just the length of that, table, right? And, can people get their head around sort of the organization, the hierarchy of important items, how they organize, sometimes with duplication, right, in the rows, so just, well, you could spend an inordinate amount of time doing, that and doing it different ways. I think that being able to present the higher messages, that people can walk away with a higher message from the list of what's important, even if they don't remember every single detail of 150 rows. I feel like that's important, in some way, that comes about as we go forward.
Yeah.
Not necessarily interested in going row by row per se, because
no, that was hard.
That does end up being difficult and time consuming to try to do every line by line, but I feel like that's why I feel like the hierarchy of the most important salient things are the areas of focus on the way.
Joanne?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I remember this well when we worked on that. And I feel like the way we ended was we had tried to figure out a way to make that table more streamlined, more easier to grasp for the public, et cetera. And it was just so cumbersome. And like you said, so many overlapping recommendations and themes, et cetera, that did we not decide that we would just sort of leave that as is and not bother to sort of try to fix it, but then just have um, like this addendum or in the future, an annual kind of report saying these are taking from that, these are our priorities for the year, for the next few years, et cetera. And then, and this is what we've done so far. Does that make sense?
I definitely envision it the latter way.
Well, I think we got halfway through and then we petered out.
Right.
And so
keep going.
I think I remember raising my hand and saying, why don't I just take a stab at this?
Okay.
Boil it down, and then that stab has not been taken yet. So I will re-volunteer myself to take a stab at it and boil it down, and then we can read it.
It's true. We did do a lot of work on it. We did eliminate a lot of duplicates and things like that. So that was super helpful.
It has not been lost. It's still there.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was in the other room over here, Barb. You recommended what again? Some kind of way to rate them. It was creating a matrix to try to get everything together.
Yeah, it was sort of a tool that I created, but it was almost more to understand what prioritization is, and based on risk. And if you don't do these, that too is cumbersome. But it's geared. I was geared more towards assets, things that are important to the community, let's say, our treatment system. If we didn't do that, what are the ramifications and what are the risks? So, but I think that was sort of more the tool, whereas in the plan itself, there's so many, it's just like there's so many words, and not enough like specific action items, and that's what we found. It was just, there's so much overlap. And so it's like, we realized there's really like, maybe 10 real priorities that we need to work on. And so I think recognizing that all the water projects, all the sewer projects, and then all the other things that are nice to do, they're just not as high priority. So we kind of intuitively felt that way. And that's, but if we could somehow harness that and capture, I think, those high level topics and push those high level topics forward to an actionable plan, I think that could be an addendum, and then the tracking of it could be done maybe as a using tools as needed to see what's a priority and what
No,
what cities should be working on.
because that's exactly how I remember it, and that's why, that's why I brought it up. It's almost like we stopped Jane because it became a beast of its own.
It did.
And, you know, her ideas, and they still are, they were great then, they still are very, very good. But you almost need AI to figure out out of these 156, how to prioritize everything.
It needs.
Or we do. the
That's a great
opposite.
idea, John Eric. We should feed the whole thing right into AI.
I'll go home and do that this afternoon.
I've already thought of that, and then I refuse because, you can't put enough proper parameters to get a good outcome. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
You could spend a year trying to come up with perfect scenarios and it's not gonna work. But Julie, it's funny you say that. So that's the spreadsheet, why we stopped. It became too cumbersome.
I agree with
Now,
what Julie.
going from 157, go from 56 down, to me, that's a separate issue. It's an important issue, but it's just a separate issue for the addendum. I do want to add why we created the plan, how the plan got created in the first place.
Yeah.
As we were putting it together, there was a challenge between geographic areas
Mhm.
and the risks that were encountered. Okay, because all the hazards we have, fire, drought, storm surge, intense storms and everything else. One way of doing it was by addressing it by the hazard, by the assets. But geographically, we insisted to get some geographical sections
Yeah.
in the report.
And I think it made total sense to do that for the first report.
Correct, and I totally agree
Going
that the
forward.
thing is very, very thick.
Yeah.
It's almost like a novel. We got heavy on the climate science.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think Newburyport was ahead of the game in that. The state
Yeah.
didn't have the resources that it has now.
yeah,
And that's
so,
why we're thinking, okay, well, instead of redoing that science for an addendum, redoing all that analysis, we'll just refer to the state.
so normally I would say revising a report. My vote is typically to revise it using the same format of the existing report. So if someone had the bandwidth to incorporate the changes in the report. But that's what I'm hearing now is that the report is it's so thick. That it's almost like we're creating a new report.
No, I think the way that we were doing it before, and this it sort of can morph into a subgroup discussion, because I don't want to take too much more time with a large group, was that we were actually tracking all the items, and so there was a way to refer back. I'm not sure we have to actually be that specific in terms of whatever we end up with for an addendum. The addendum is really taking any new priorities and expanding on those. That I think the boiling down all the action items is really for tracking purposes, in my mind, and anyone who disagrees with that, absolutely let me know, because I might not.
No, I agree with that. Like action
Yeah.
items could actually be an addendum that is called a new
Yeah,
appendix to the
that's
plan.
right. Yeah.
Like
Revised,
here's a new appendix to the original
It's
plan.
chapter 4, basically, like, why don't we
Chapter
just boil down chapter 4?
That's fine. All I'm saying is that, like Sarah was saying, if we have new items.
Yeah.
New items that there's no paragraph in there right now.
Yeah,
My vote is always to modify the original document, just like you do with city ordinances. And you have edits as you go.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of those because I don't like having two docs to look at. That's just me. You know, that's just.
I only think I agree with that to an extent, John Eric, but I only think we should do that if we can truly make the original plan and that original list of recommendations more manageable. Because I think start adding new things to that right now, given the state that that's in and how confusing it already is, will just make it more confusing. Whereas I feel like if we can boil that down and then really make it more functional, then great. If not, then I think the addendum approach is the right way to go, and just to refer back to the old plan constantly as like the original reference document, whereas then we just have something much more small and concise to move forward with every year. I don't know.
and this needs isn't the end of it. I think within 2030 would be the right time to really revisit. If you want to revisit everything. So this is sort of a mini step.
I agree with Julia.
Yeah.
Alternatively, if we didn't want to go that route, we could put an executive summary and point things out if they wanted to use that. But it does sound like everyone agrees that, we have to reemphasize the priorities as well as add some new items, some of which may be in the high priority list, some of which may, not. But where do we want to come out of today's meeting? We want to empower a subcommittee or something
yeah,
to
I think-
get to work on it?
Subcommittee, we could resurrect who we had before, or if someone isn't interested in sitting on it, let them know.
Assuming they want.
Exactly, or if anyone wants to be more involved.
It makes sense to have someone from the original, so, I mean, I don't mind helping making the agenda, because
Mhm.
even before we make a decision on how to do it, what we're talking about right now, how to do it. We don't know what we're adding. We may find that what we're adding is, right now, we might be talking more than we need to, because what we're adding is
Right.
not that big.
Yeah. And so what I would hope the subcommittee would come up with a proposed list of what we're adding. We'll come back to the group, say, what do you think? And then go,
But even right now, what new things do we have? Because
We have.
you have a reason for adding things,
Yes,
and they're in here,
they are in there.
yeah,
Heat, drought.
so it's a good
pests.
start, yeah,
Yeah.
so why don't we,
Plus down, so please,
So,
along with it, what's been accomplished since 2020.
right, and the city's going through the MVP 2.0 process, and so we may have communications outreach priorities that related to equity and inclusion. And so those would be
Mhm.
priorities that would be included in it.
Yeah. I
I
think-
Yeah. Go ahead, Julia.
I was just going to say, I think it's, I know that the 2.0 process is intended to help us come up with some of these new priorities and recommendations, and I'm sure it will. And there'll be ones that we haven't even thought of yet, probably. But I do think it's also important for our group as our resiliency committee to go into that 2.0 process with already an idea of what we want those, or what we think some recommendations already should be. Because they are two separate. They're still, we still are the resiliency committee, and then this 2.0 process will be separate. So I don't know, I feel like it will be helpful to already have maybe a list in our heads of what we want to add.
Okay. So why don't we, I'm gonna reach out to that original separate subcommittee and let me know, respond back if you are interested in continuing on or not. And then anyone who wants to join, just let us know.
you already read it.
But I think we ought
We-
to, if we can.
Yeah.
What's the deadline? When do we want to have that work done? I think it's a good idea if people are gonna be asked to sign up for something and know how much.
It
work or
really is
work
gonna depend on, when we started the, sort of looking at all the action items, it was hard to schedule everybody, and so very hard to have a deadline.
When we did the original plan, we had a deadline of a year. Jokingly, we all said, which year? It took 5 years. We thought we could do it in 1 year. Remember that, Andy?
Yeah, and this is why a whole new
It
plan, I
takes-
think, makes sense.
Yeah,
It
we
makes
don't
sense.
wanna-
Yeah.
So,
But
No, of course not take 5, but I'm saying that
Yeah.
putting a deadline doesn't really,
yeah,
you can try out as much as hard as you want. It's really hard.
And when I'm saying the original separate, I mean the one that we had like last year, so you were on there, Andy, Julia, Barb, and myself.
Oh, for that, yeah.
Right in the
I'll be
little.
glad to stay on it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too.
And you definitely need new blood, because, you definitely need new blood, so.
Right.
And Barb's, everyone that's new is good. Yeah.
The reason for asking that is that I was in the back of my head, you may recall, we had a historic preservation effort to set aside some portions of the city for historic designations and others exempted from that. And because there were never any deadlines, by the time they issued their report, which was 5 years later, It was essentially meaningless. It couldn't go anywhere.
Well, back in my head, I wanna get it done by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's state that up front.
All right,
Yeah,
by the end of the year, folks, we're gonna have the most amazing addendum
and you're gonna crack
in
the.
public communications in terms of implementation.
I would also make the argument that something that's shorter and more consolidated, meaning like the list of the original plan, right, can stay there as an entire universe of projects, right, or, you know, issues to be addressed and so forth. There might be a consolidated version that's more organized and, you know, hierarchy of some type. I feel like that's more compelling for people to retain and to understand than, you know, than expecting them to then see, you know, the entirety of an amended document, even though I agree, I like the idea of having that document, source document, to be updated the entirety of it. I think for our purposes with other parties and working with, you know, city council, you know, sorry, it's immediately having that shorter version of where the emphasis is today is much more compelling and useful for some of those things than, you know, updating the entire plan or getting bogged down that process, but then having a voluminous report that too many people
Yeah.
won't read because it's too much.
Exactly. All right, so clear, concise by the end of the year. So I'm gonna send out an email to that original group. If anyone wants to join us, let me know now, end of the meeting, or just shoot me an email. That work? All right, moving on. Communications policy, this sounds super official and maybe overkill, but Sarah and I talked about this quite a bit when we were doing the outreach work for MVP, Sarah Tappan and I.
Really?
In terms of social
I read
media.
this thing,
Yes,
so I
you
never,
did.
I don't know where this is coming from.
No, not the policy, but in terms of what to post on social
Uh-huh.
media, because we do have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. And so, and then I think there's an email going around about, you know, we should, you know, tell the public this, we should tell the public that. So this is way overkill. I fully admit this was and so, but I thought, you know, I did give it parameters, but essentially my thinking is, not having to go an extra step and just sharing on the city's ELR, any resiliency committee related, notices of our events. And then probably city related as well, so that's already gone through whatever approval process in terms of whatever department is going through, and we're just disseminating city information. But if it isn't, city related, I think that we should have a little bit more of a vetting process, so we don't really want to just duplicate what's in the news, because we don't want to just start spewing things on our social media pages about things that people see regularly anyway. And so I was just, you know, well, how do we deal with that? And John Eric, I think this was spurred by something that you had been saying, you know, we really need to be talking, I can't even remember what the topic was, but we really need to be talking about this and getting this out there. And so what I'm proposing, is just that a second level of vetting, if it's not city related, maybe a city staff person and myself or whoever we want designated, just sort of give a sign off. If we were to send something or post something on Facebook if it was in city.
If we were to do that, could we have a designated city staff, Kelsey or somebody, so that we're not?
Yeah, that's what I would hope.
Myself and Christine both, I can be the point person,
Okay.
and Christine also, she does a lot of that. We're working on a comprehensive look. It's by no means gonna happen quickly, but we're looking at comprehensive because it's sort of board by board, committee by committee,
Mhm.
department by department. We'd like to see, you know, exceptions where needed, but we'd like to see broader.
So is
Clear
this
policies
communication
statewide.
out to like the e-alert and social media, or is it communication to our internal?
Out.
Okay.
And so if it's just, you know, meeting notices and minutes and, you know, if we're sponsoring an event, I think that we could probably just send it out. But if it's something that someone else is doing that's outside the city, I would feel more comfortable having a second set of eyes on before we post it on one of our social media. Okay.
I agree with
Awesome.
that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Jane, is there any communications policy currently?
Not really.
So,
It's just
okay.
been, let's try not to get in trouble.
Right. Well, this all seems like good practice, so I guess way to go, ChatGPT. But I do wonder, Sean, I think this is more a question for you. Would be appropriate to have something like this at a higher level, the whole city as a general, because this could be applied across
Right, right.
boards and commissions.
So it wouldn't be.
So I'm
doesn't
just
necessarily
wondering
have
if
to
that
be
could serve a broader
Yeah,
purpose.
and I think, as that gets more and more sort of becomes more, on paper as opposed to an idea right now. I think I'd also like to get some input from counselors or others with drafts as well on what that would look like. But
Great.
yeah, we need, I think everybody is gonna be better off. I think a lot of people. would like
Agreed.
guidance.
And is this in reference also to social media information sharing? Because I think that maybe we'll want to reference that too, like if there's social media outlets for this information specifically, or where is this?
That's what prompted my thinking anyway,
that was in
actually.
Yeah.
Was, yeah, we wouldn't necessarily send out news generally through the e-alerts. That really is for committee notices, but in terms of our Facebook page and Instagram.
Not always. I mean, we've done notices for the Plum Island Turnpike project, for example.
But that's city related.
True. But that's the type of thing that we've done that's not committee related, not a direct action that's being done by the committee. Somebody externally, Kristen or somebody said, can you help us publicize it?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what, and if that's not captured in this, I mean, we don't need to use this at all. This was just to sort of get folks thinking about it. But that's what I meant by city or committee related or, our typical pieces.
Jane, how many people respond to Facebook page?
I haven't actually, I am not a social media person, so I haven't followed it.
I mean,
What do you think, Sarah?
I-
Not a whole
I
lot.
do have a question around that. So are you managing it?
Pretty
Sort of,
much.
yeah.
But I
Do you
don't
allow-
publish anything
do you
without
allow
asking
Do you
Jane.
allow public comments back?
Yeah.
That
We
was one of the,
explicitly disallow them, but we've never had a lot of them.
because that was one of the topics is sometimes people will just turn off comments entirely. And that makes it much easier because then you don't have to worry about moderating for what may or may not be inappropriate or.
We're not moderating for inappropriate.
I think we just haven't gotten
If
any.
you allow it, then you pretty much take the risk of allowing everything because you don't wanna. So but I mean, that's one of the things we wanna look at as well, is advice on that, and some it may make sense to allow comments. Others, but I think in general, we would like to discuss.
I agree with some of the concerns that you're citing here, just because they're normal sort of, things like your office is gonna get, an understanding what these messages mean, where they're coming from, whose comments they are, and then if other parties are chiming in on a platform of some type. Does that create a whole can of worms, whether we're basically posting all that stuff and not knowing, the order of magnitude that's well with that. I agree with the idea of sort of simplifying or pushing information out that's, for whatever reason, or event, committee meeting, information, et cetera, but not necessarily creating with it a whole form that people in itself.
Yeah,
So-
and, put it in perspective, and we very rarely post now, and we were posting more when we were hyping the expo.
That's when these
And,
forums
in
start.
the forums, I mean, that was why we started these pages. And so it's been fairly fun.
201 on Instagram as of January. We've been updated since 115 on Facebook and 627 on the alerts.
Something.
So the alerts is the biggest group.
The only thing, Sean, we haven't met from John Eric. The only thing
It likes.
this is not gonna be, a favorable comment from from your side. We can't lose sight of our mission. If any group, if the group turns into making everyone satisfied, you lose your mission. The resiliency group was created to truly do resiliency work. And a lot of times, it doesn't mean doing things that the city council might want or the administration might want for many reasons. But strictly for resiliency work. Our job, when we created this committee, our job was to come up with resiliency items, identify assets, and be the catalyst for actions. If we have every department review what we publish, then we water it down. We can't lose sight of our mission.
No, I don't think.
And I just want to be clear, I'm not saying that, in Sean, I'm not saying by any means that we're heading down that road.
Yeah.
But if we have things that the committee wants to post and have it go through the administration's office, then you lose your voice. Does anyone see any remote agreement with that?
Well, I don't see that there's necessarily like an desire to sort of minimize what the commission might be saying, right? But it's more just like, for instance, like the format of that, not running afoul and having a whole bunch of other problems that as a government entity, you know, we want to avoid like the whole chat thing being created by itself. That's a thing in itself that has nothing to do with just the commission saying, you know, we as a committee recommend this and we think.
So this is a conversation, this is about content.
This is not about content, no, and that's why I was gonna interrupt, just to make sure before.
It's not about content.
We're not looking at moderating content. There may be cases where I could imagine something is like, is that appropriate content? And that might, however.
Yeah.
This is more about, allowing things like allowing this is a government or quasi city, whatever. It represents a city. It's a
Is
public.
there,
As
There's
it
certain
should.
things
is there,
Yes, as it should.
Is there?
is there an issue? Has something gone out that you think?
No, this is not from, this is just from a side conversation and, you know, we should be throwing this. It would recommend, like, let's get this out into the public and me thinking, okay, well, we don't really have a policy, really a structured way of thinking, yes, this is what we really want to get out or not. And so this is sort of just heading off. I don't want to make a mountain out of a
How
molehill.
would that head that off? I mean, we've gotten specific suggestions or requests, can you publicize this? And informally, I ask you, you say yes, and they've gone out.
I think this is all, I don't think there's any problem with that. My feeling about this is that it's working really well. It's great that the Resiliency Committee has an Instagram and Facebook presence and social media and getting stuff out there in a different way is great. Like John Eric said, we need to be doing that kind of thing because one of our missions is public education and creating more of support for our goals. But at the same time, I do think everything, maybe not everything, but anything that's involving city projects or facts or positions that the Resiliency Committee or the city might have on some issue should be checked at least by, like you were saying before, I think it makes sense to have a city liaison, whether it's Kelsey or Andy or somebody on the committee who can say, or John Eric, like, oh, we don't want to say that yet because that project hasn't started yet, or we're about to, that's not going to happen anymore, or just to make sure that we're not putting anything out there that actually might mislead people in the public when we're not ready to do that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think we're doing that.
Right, and I'm not, I mean, you and I have been working on this, so I'm certainly not accusing myself of messing up or anything, but I think.
Wondering how I use this, what do I do with this, but because. I mean,
It's just putting it on paper in case you're not around, Sarah, or like somebody else is in charge of the Facebook page one day. I feel like it maybe does make sense to have in writing, like.
So if that was the case, Julie, it would have to be a lot more specific than what's written here. Because it doesn't identify the Facebook pages, it doesn't identify who the contact is, how you post, what the password is, I mean, what.
So why don't you and I work it out? I think that this was very high level in my mind, and you're taking it to the next step, which you always do, which is why I think we're a good team. So why don't you and I work it out, and then we'll talk to Sean to make sure that it's all good. That, okay? All right, awesome. All right, updates. Kelsey, anything on 2.0 you want to talk about?
2.0, for those who don't know, is a grant the city was awarded last year, and many other communities are similarly working on it. It stands for Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness. So this is a planning phase. So we have a core team, which is 50% city staff, 50% community liaisons, who are just residents who applied and were interviewed and were hired, and they're being paid for their time through the grant. So we have kind of assembled the core team. we're working on a resiliency roadmap, which is the team focusing on different areas of resiliency in the city. And then soon, I think we're gonna be working on public outreach and engaging the public, and we have 2 different vendors helping us with that process. So we don't have any events or public meetings or anything planned yet, but in the spring, I think we will. So that's all.
No, good. Anybody else? For grants and funding updates, we have partnered with MVPC. I sent out an email to the group on this, on a MVP application, Cooling the Valley. And so we will be one of 3 cities, and I believe it's with Joan and Lawrence and in Newburyport, that will be working with them, or have committed to working with them should they get the funds from MVP on looking at heat in the cities in terms of heat islands and shading and what can be done. And so that went in. I think our letter was signed by the mayor yesterday and went in maybe today, I think I remember. And we'll find out when everyone else does.
And that's the one, the infrared. Yes.
If you want more information, let me know, or just, it should be a pretty good synopsis in boxes.
When do you think we will decide?
For MVP, I don't know what I don't know. Isn't it normal? It's the same cycle as all the other applications, but I think probably.
I haven't been there.
Yeah, I haven't. Not sure.
Maybe by the end of the year?
Oh, yeah, by summer.
By summer?
Typically, yeah, I think so. MVP application, I followed up with Nancy last minute and Kim, you might know this, what resiliency related MVP applications are.
So the dam, I think John Eric got Nancy that information she needed for the dam
Yeah, so,
application.
yep, so this is under the ECO.
Mhm.
Just for clarity, because of the acronyms and the buzzwords and all that. That's what you're talking about for the MVP.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, I went under the eco one stop.
So yeah, we're doing the, I'm helping out for the, lower sub dam, and then Jordy worked on the, sidewalks.
The wind walls for the
Yep.
wastewater treatment facility, which we've been told is probably not a great candidate this year for that eco one stop, but we're gonna apply anyway. And then it sounds like the cooling corridors, the
Yeah,
tree
did that
one.
happen?
No, I
No?
think they weren't, the tree commission was interested in doing different cooling areas across the city, and they wanted to do a mapping program. They
Yeah.
wanted a little bit more time, so
Mhm.
they're gonna hold off on this year and try to get a more robust application together for next year.
So we should let them know that the city's now working with MPC on this.
They know,
They
they
do.
tried to use the application and they were struggling with it.
No, the, working with MVPC, the cooling, the corridors. Oh, they,
Oh, on the other.
yes,
one?
on the
Yes,
other one,
yeah,
because
yes.
that will essentially give them that
Yes.
information.
Yep, so the point of contact there is, Bob Mueller's been with them.
Okay, I'll send that in for the blog then. Anything else on Eco One Stop or MVP? This drought resiliency and water efficiency grant program, we talked about this in January, and I think where we left it, I don't think applications are due until the fall. We were really just looking at how to address drought, and I think the conversation surrounded with the reservoirs in the watershed and how drought might affect that watershed and have impacts on our reservoirs. Julia, I'm gonna put you on the spot because we had talked about, I think we're going to look into consultants that specifically worked with drought or had
Yes.
experience with drought. Did you have any luck?
Yeah, I sent an email, I guess it was maybe a couple months ago. I sent you guys like an update email about this. My research into it kind of went down a bunch of rabbit holes because what I found was that anytime I tried to find a consulting group that was working on drought resiliency and water supply planning related to drought, et cetera, and future projections and all that, all I was coming up with was consultants that did drought management plans, like water supply management. And we have one of those. The state of Massachusetts, I think, requires everybody to have like sort of a drought plan. Um, and correct, John Eric, and Kim, do you know if we have one?
Yeah, the water division does. Kim, you want to take?
I actually don't know about it.
Oh, so yeah, the state requires it. Peking's modifying it. I mean, whether he's modifying today, but in general, it's constantly being modified.
Yeah.
And to repeat, I don't know if any new plan is being submitted this spring, summer, or fall.
Right.
But
There's
we
like
do have one.
we have one. There's a pretty standard format for it. Most municipalities have one, and there are consultants that do these. In terms of finding a consultant that does anything beyond that, in terms of like resiliency planning for drought, like what we were talking about is what do we think, how do we think a potential future drought conditions should impact our water supply projections related to development limitations and stuff like that. I could not find a single example of something like that, even out west. So there are umpteen consulting companies that do drought management plans, but that's something we already have. So I guess that was my update, which isn't very helpful, unfortunately.
No, but you're hitting home exactly the issue, Julie. And I kind of found the same thing. I found Stantec being, high up in the food chain that works on this type of stuff.
Yeah.
I think, Julie, what we're asking is we're asking to find someone that has a crystal ball. And
Yeah.
I don't think that exists because planning for a drought is planning for a drought.
Yeah.
We already have consultants and people that are experts that help you plan for a drought. And I'm just tying in everything that you're saying with, we aren't going to find someone's portfolio that says we do models for drought, because what it is, it's whatever risk you want to live with and you want to forecast the drought. Only Mother Nature and climate change can tell us when and how many days we're to go without water.
Right.
There's no person in the world that's going to tell us that.
And it's so hypothetical when you talk about development limitations and build out scenarios and things like that, and how much more capacity will we have for additional residents in the future. It's so hypothetical, that I think that's probably why you don't see this kind of analysis taking place yet, maybe. And it would be a combination of the engineers who do the drought management plans and the planners who are doing the, development scenarios. And that's just, I don't think that's happening yet.
But that's exactly, this is kind of my point about our group. Engineers are by nature conservative, and engineers by nature, civil engineers by nature, have notoriously not been tree huggers. They're jumping on the resiliency bandwagon because it's the latest market. That's how they make money. So that's what they're going to do. But I've worked with engineers for 40 years, and they have time and time again for decades been climate deniers. Yes, you will find some that are into it because now it's a market, but deep inside, even people that have worked and provided reports to the Water Commission this past year have openly said things and made proposals that were anti-resilient, anti-agreement with climate change impacts. And my point with that, you guys, is to plan for a community and how much build out a community can have. It doesn't need an expert. It needs people to agree with how careful we want to be and what kind of risk are we willing to live with. Because you can always get an administration and a group of city councilors that say, oh, we can double in size. But then you start looking at the climate, the drought. I did a quick analysis. If we have no rain, our water, it's simple. We have 1 billion gallons of water at 2.5 million gallons a day. That's like a year and a half. A year and a half of no rain. We have no water. You don't need an expert to tell you, will we encounter a year and a half of no rain? I'm on the resilience committee. My vote is we will experience a year and a half with no rain. What that means is last year we had 44 inches of rain. That's an average year, but it got spread out with sprinkles. We didn't have like 2 inches of rain, 3 inches of rain at a time. So that didn't really even make it to the groundwater. So even when you do have rain, theoretically, everyone's groundwater is low. I talked to the guy at Stan Tech. They are getting inundated with phone calls because municipalities' groundwater wells are low. Across Massachusetts, they're low. Because even on paper, like I said, we had 40 inches of rain, but it didn't make it to the groundwater for a number of reasons. And look at California, look at anyone. This is where our group, you can find, this is where our group has to decide how to make a recommendation to the city.
And that's where this came from, because we were talking about build out into your work with Pete King and yeah, and then we talked about that buffer and how much of a buffer we really need in terms of full build out, but how much extra water we want to make sure that we still have. And so then we wanted an understanding of like, well, how is drought going to impact our watershed and the reservoirs in building a buffer off of that?
Yeah, the table, the discussion I had with him was sort of a consolidated version to give the folks, but it basically doesn't take into account necessarily drought on top of the cap that we had talked about, right? It sort of assumes, their current water supply, volume, so to speak, generally speaking, in the future, limited by how much we can provide at some point whenever providing with units. But it doesn't take into account, like, let's say there's a huge heat wave and extended period of time and there's a drought, and does that I don't know. And that's why when we talked about Peter, it was like, is there a 5% or a 10% or some other threshold of buffer, to help us out, stay ahead of it.
And on that, and I really do not want to come across as being aggressive. I want to share my knowledge. With that, Andy, the consultants historically, they're like the stock market.
Have underappreciated.
Well, they're like the old stock market people, where they look at historical information. The next time I hear a consultant say, well, historically, that's when I close the book on the conversation, because it's not
It's
historical.
not about the trend,
Because they come up with like 2% growth, 3% growth. Historically, it's like traffic data.
Yeah.
Let's do 2% growth, 3% growth. Those days are gone. And that's where we have to think differently than the consultants tell us.
And that's why that buffer is so important, because I think what you're saying is instead of looking historically, what we are is planning in a very uncertain, very uncertain future. And so for us, I think that focus and sort of coming to terms with a buffer, as a tangible example, was really important. And so, we were looking at this, this potential grant as, oh, well, that would help us with our thinking.
I mean, I think maybe what we're looking for, at least the way I'm sort of reading this, is the way we have our sea level rise projections and the way we have sort of like calculated where we want elevations to be in the future for development. We kind of are aiming, we would wish we had the same thing for drought, right? Like we wish we had a number that we could then base development projects on, evaluate development projects based on, correct?
Yeah, that would be ideal.
That would be ideal. And the challenge for that, Julie, is it would always be nice for the state to guide us into being have the state be the bad guy for limiting development.
Yep.
Or at least force the communities, or the state should force regional water supplies, because having each community fight for their own water supply is it's going to be a battle. It's not. I don't think that's fair.
And we have
We didn't wait for the state when we did our sea level rise projections. So maybe we don't wait for the state now. Maybe we just, our resiliency committee, maybe we find a consultant who can do some drought scenario projections for us and we develop our own numbers.
So I think one thing that we had talked about that maybe is our next step is finding other communities, either locally, regionally, or across, the states that are facing similar, and ask them what they've done so that we can actually learn from them. And also, I'm curious what communities have been awarded this grant and what they've done with it.
That's a good question.
Julia, are you up for taking that on?
I'll take that on. I'll take on that piece. I mean, I didn't find any other municipalities that have anything other than the basic drought management plan. Going beyond that, I wasn't able to find anything. There was something going on in Ipswich with the Ipswich River Watershed Association, but that was very different, I think, than what we're after. So I think it's a good idea to see how people have used this grant program and if there's anything we can draw from that. And I will do that research. I'm happy to look into it.
Okay, thank you. I want to move on just so we can get to everything. For the resiliency checklist, and for those in the room that aren't familiar with this resiliency checklist that we have been talking about deadlines, Barry. We've been working on this for a very long time. But essentially what it is a questionnaire or checklist for project applicants that are going, we've sort of come to the conclusion of going before the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board to answer just a few questions, and it will be guided through the MyMap program in terms of are they in a current flood zone, and are they in a future flood zone? And beyond that, are they doing anything with their site that reflects their current risk? Or, any mix down to either, it can be landscaping or hardscaping. And so the regs group has been meeting, and I think I have to send out a notice, but it sounds like we're meeting again next Tuesday, to make a plan in terms of re-presenting, since it's already gone before the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission, what we're thinking of as a tool, how this tool can be implemented for those missions, and we're also looking at the ZBA as well. And so we have an internal deadline of, I think it's like 9 to 12 months in terms of fully implementing it.
Excuse me for like, who's on the, used to be the.
The regs group is Andy and Julia and Joe, Rick Tanger is on the planning board, and then Seth. And again, we can swap that up if anyone's interested.
In terms of working on regulations about the Conservation Commission, obviously, Council is gonna be, we had kind of earlier today.
I've added,
Yeah, I'll be there on Tuesday. No, it's
awesome.
Yeah, just because we have the both zoning regulations that might touch these areas, right, and conservation regulations, and so we're kind of hand in hand, update those as much as we can, where some of the criteria for evaluation of what people are doing today might eventually, inform future regulatory requirements or criteria that the board is actually efficient in using, evaluating whether someone's appropriate for giving, so taking into account, hazards.
Yeah, sorry about that. City project updates, and Kim, if you could give us just a brief update on sort of where the mayor's office is in terms of the CIP, if you have any thoughts and that would impress the committee.
Yeah, so I don't have a big update on the CIP quite yet, because we're working through the budget process, and then we'll roll into the CIP process shortly thereafter. But we've been checking in with all the departments to get their CIP projects into OpenGov. So we're going to be reviewing those with our committee, and also the Water and Sewer Commission we have a liaison now for the CIP. So there'll be a bit more cross communication there as well. So I don't know if there's not a lot of updates.
Okay.
Other projects.
Just curious. Yeah, and then just city project updates, if there's anything that or Kim or whoever wants to
You
update.
can do it, Kim. The only thing I was gonna do, Kim, is the update on the sidewalks.
The wall,
But
yeah.
if you want, I mean, the sidewalls is just being designed. The reason why I put that in the email that you referred to my upcoming comment today. I just want to remind our group that once upon a time, had a certain mayor come in and say, hey, where do you want $1 million? And water or sewer, and we all raised our hand for water and went to sewer. Remember that, Joe? So as a group, we just can't forget what our focus is on making recommendations. That was the reason for my email.
Oh, I thought you had.
That's my only email, is to remind the group that when it comes to a ton of money, we're about to spend tens and tens of millions. We gotta decide what we recommend for priorities. And That's my only reminder for the group.
Thank you. Okay.
So to make it more clear, my vote is water. I mean, that sidewalk project is up to 6 million now.
Wow.
It's up to 6 million. We didn't know it was gonna be that high. The pumps themselves, Kim, ended up being like, it's like $1.5 million for the pumps. It's a huge project and I just want everyone to relax. Because it's designed and you got the permits, sometimes that is the tail that wags the dog. And that could come to bite us if we approve it because it's table ready for construction. When it's $6 million to protect the plant, at the same storm could have hit the water plant, at the same storm.
But you have to do both. We can't live without.
Yeah, I think we have to do-
No, but that's why I wanted to bring it to people's attention. I am not saying no at all. What I'm saying is, sorry to interrupt, Sarah. I didn't mean to interrupt so fast,
You didn't.
but I just wanted us to remind ourselves of what.
But I'm.
I agree
with what the
I'm
priorities
struggling
are,
with What
that's
you're
all.
trying to say though, are you thinking now that we know the cost? And we have it designed and permitted, there should be some revisiting, the project has an issue because it's too expensive?
I understand what John is getting at, but I wouldn't necessarily say pivot entirely, you know, especially given that like permitting might start over again, you would delay this project over here. Permitting starts over again, regulatory environment changes, other things change. So I agree with the notion that you're getting at, which is water supply is very important. But I don't know, for me, that doesn't immediately toggle to abandon, you know, this thing that also needs resiliency. You know, our sewer system also needs to, you know, function. So I'm not convinced that necessarily means, I agree with what you're getting at in concept. But I wouldn't say that necessarily informs me switching gears and totally abandoning that one in order to totally shift gears over.
Yeah, and I think we've been pretty consistent that we're advancing permitting and design for
the dam.
all of the
Yeah, for all the
projects, you know,
projects, yeah.
so I don't think that just because we're advancing permitting and design means that we're gonna just do the wing walls and nothing else on the list.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah,
Like, I'm so not saying that. Because we're submitting for a grant
Mhm.
for the wing walls. If we get it, that means an approval to move forward and find $5 million.
Mhm.
That's where I'm getting.
Understood. Yeah. Which is difficult. Yeah.
I don't have an answer, guys.
Yeah.
I really don't. I'm just reminding us that we have so much to do. That's it. I mean, that's my only other project update is the dam and we're 30% concept design is pretty much done. We're a few weeks away from finishing that. We're applying for grant money for that under the one which you're talking about, the grant. That's for the final design, to remind everyone here, for the final design of raising the dam. Whether or not we get that grant, water circles made it clear, we're gonna push in the administration, but we're gonna move forward on the design and the final design for the dam. So we'll have the same consultant time bond do the final design. That'll proceed this year, hopefully with grant money. So that's the dam update that I have and the sidewalk update that's on.
Plum Island Turnpike study,
Oh, we got that. Yeah, so we're wrapping that up. Had a very successful final public meeting, great turnout. Time Bond did a very good job. They did a very good job pulling everything together. Our next plan and Kim, you and and Sean in the mayor's office. Mike, you know, you probably start getting some phone calls for people to push for getting that project going into final design. Andy, you'll start getting phone calls as the planner to see if you can support final design.
Yeah.
I managed it because it was on my desk. We co-managed it and it's concept only, studies done
co-managed it with Newbury.
with Newbury. Yep. That concept is, the study is gonna be done within a month.
Mhm.
And essentially, for everyone here, we just came up with a concept of a shared use path on the turnpike, and it, you know, I think we should move forward with it, but again, added to all the other projects, there's a lot going on. So, the proposal is, I think, 10.
10 on the long section from like Union to the bridge, right?
Yeah.
And then the bridge can't be altered.
The
So that's
bridge,
the same.
it's already high.
And then after the bridge onto the island, you don't want a big jump, so that's kind of. You can raise it elevated a little bit, but not as much. And then out to the reservation, same thing. So it's not ideal,
What it, yeah, it's like.
but it does preserve, it does help those folks basically on the street, I would say.
You just put everybody now on a rowboat.
Yeah.
So John,
Yeah, and then
Eric,
open up conversations that we've had before about encouraging development on the island if we're going to make it, but at the same time, I think. We've talked about, if we're going to do something, do it sooner so that we continue to get those tax dollars out of that, it just makes financial sense to do it sooner rather than do it later. But Julia, did I hear your voice?
yeah, I just want, can you give me like the fastest, like 2 sentence summary? It just, because I know there were big problems with regard to salt marsh and all that in terms of permitting to widen or elevate or do anything. So how did you resolve that? And so we're widening it with no wetland impacts?
So they're proposing to go into final design with slight impacts to some salt marsh areas. And we chose an elevation that it's not extreme so that the impacts will be minimal, but it's also not zero impact.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the state regulators at least open the door a little bit to saying you can do an analysis, a full analysis, right?
Yeah.
That you're well aware of. So
Go through me, but would you guys end up having to go for a variance from the state? And thinking that might be likely because of the public benefits kind of thing?
yes, because they also found a document that might allow us to maintain it under a legal document that exists for the construction and maintenance of the original turnpike. So,
I just have to chime in. I'm skeptical of the idea, generically speaking, of horizontal expansion and resource area impacts for doing, the improvements we're talking about. So from my perspective, I definitely agree with doing what we can do within reason, within cost and sort of the constraints to do it. But I never actually saw that as being a realistic scenario in which there's horizontal expansion, giant grading changes and so forth through the entire turnpike. We're going to provide access to a federal, refuge and other communities, neighborhoods that we have out there for the cities and towns, right? But we're going to do that by sacrificing environmental resources that the federal government's supposed to be, also protecting. So I don't see the logic behind assuming that we're going to be able to get much support for more environmental impact in order to get, I guess I hesitate with the idea of thinking there's any substantial impact that could be gained.
Do you think what they proposed is beyond what's reasonable to get approved?
Sorry, go. I mean, I'm just hesitant to think that, I think that having like a marginal impact, I think we have to work essentially as much as we can with the surface, the asphalt or the horizontal surface area that we have to work with, because even before this study started, just having a conversation about that order of magnitude of impact on resource areas.
Yeah.
We already have that same project on Hale Street, but that's a lesser, I would argue, the debate we have over here. So again, I just don't think it's realistic, especially if we're going to be investing further municipal time, resources into it. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to go on the presumption that we can get further relief than is reasonable in my view, or more resource area impacts,
and that's why they took.
Especially given the longevity of it, which wouldn't be there either, right?
Right. So, yeah. So,
but that's also where they came up with the moderate approach. They did not go to preparing for year 2070. They didn't go to elevation 12. So when we met with the regulators, our group for the study met with the regulators. My takeaway from that was the project is done. Because you can't mitigate salt marsh. It won't grow on upland that you excavate through and pretend that you can create soil
Yeah.
and other conditions for ecology to make that salt marsh grow. We were told that you cannot replicate salt marsh, period. That's why I felt it was done.
Mhm.
I'm only one person on this whole study. We had Newbury, myself,
Yeah.
and we had the public, including yourself, Andy. Everyone else reviewed it. City departments, everyone reviewed it. They chose to do the moderate approach. I didn't argue, because when it comes to final design, maybe the regulators will change their mind.
Mhm.
I'm not saying they will.
Yeah.
I have no opinion.
Yeah.
At least they came up with something that wasn't a lie. They didn't say we are not going to do any impacts at all.
Yeah, yeah.
They were realistic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Whether we proceed with final design on that note
Yeah.
is where your comments come in. And then we decide whether to take this and go, shall we actually implement it?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't see us as a city, town, right, doing that. The federal government, if they were asked themselves,
Yeah.
are we going to fund now full design or construction of something to get to the refuge? That's gonna impact resource areas while getting to people to a place to see resource areas and habitat.
Yeah.
That doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense for them. So I think to some degree, it's also a factor, and like Julia said, like it's only getting to a certain point and so forth. So given all the other infrastructure concerns, like you mentioned earlier, water supply and so forth, I don't see how Newburyport, much less, even with Newbury or the federal government, is going to be able to do a substantial roadway widening expansion, et cetera. I think it's largely doing, as middle to lower end of the spectrum improvements to improve bicycle and pedestrian connectivity and safety and so forth. But probably not with the whole, and somebody brought in like a bridge with like a 2-deck thing going out there, like not realistic,
No. Oh, wait. No, I need to squash that. No one came up with that.
No, that
Oh, no,
was.
I'm not, this is someone else entirely. You can't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody came up with that.
Like, yeah, that's not even cost, order. of
No.
magnitude.
No.
So
I
again,
think
I just.
The slide deck, but they said this is not.
Not it. All right, well, what's the next step then? Who is it? Who initiates?
No, the next step is a great question, because
Yeah.
I just got the email today from Bob Eulich. He Halverson teamed up with Time Bot,
Okay.
and he's interested in proceeding with this project, and I told him, contact anyone you want. I use your name, Jordy,
More than happy.
administration.
Yeah. More than happy.
Squeaky wheel gets greased.
Yeah.
But I didn't put it in writing, but I also, they already know. It's primarily Newbury as far as geography, as far as the amount of the road.
Agreed.
However, but if we agree to do a bike path, a shared use path from our city line is by the airport, give or
Can be
take.
shared.
It's by the airport, give or take.
Yeah.
It's 1/3, 2/3.
Yeah.
We aren't gonna do nothing for our city and then do a shared use path. Okay, enough said. So you got my point there.
Agreed, yeah.
So it's gonna be somehow a teamwork, or if collectively they agree, let's not do it. For final design, let's not do it, to be determined. I think they'll try to do it because they'll try to get grant money to do it. And if the regulators shut it down, they still need to raise it for public safety,
Yeah.
but you don't have to add the bike path. At least somehow the outcome has to be, you gotta raise it to some extent. The flap allowed for improvements to benefit the towns, and they openly said, the benefit of the town is to get more people at the refuge via non-vehicular.
Right.
I mean, that was the point of the grant.
That was the point of the grant.
But your point.
Public access with different modes of transportation, whether that becomes reality, we won't know until final design.
But your point is well taken, that if it's only a medium impact on wetlands with the shared use path, then without it, the road's more narrow, and so it may not be as big.
Oh, yeah, and this is my
So
opinion.
that's.
My opinion, I got when I left the regulator, they said, you have to do an alternative analysis to see if it's worthy of doing. A bike path, the regulators, is not worthy of impact to the wetlands,
Yeah.
salt marsh,
That's all.
because salt marsh is special.
Yeah.
Salt marsh is special. A bike path does not give you carte blanche approval. If we just raise it for public safety, they will.
Understood,
I
yeah.
wanna make that clear.
Yeah,
So the final design might be, let's try the bike path. If it shuts down halfway, design fee gets lowered because we're done with the design, let's raise it 2 feet. and we don't even need a design,
Understood.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, understood.
Alright.
Yeah, good.
All right, guys. Welcome, Molly.
I'm sorry, I had a deadline. And now you're wrapping up?
We're wrapping up.
It's super hot in here.
It is hot in here. It's all our brains just really working hard. Does anyone have anything else before we wrap up? Molly, do you have anything?
Did you make any big decisions?
Yeah, you're
Any-
getting a raise.
Yes. Okay, we all are.
Yeah, we have a meeting next month.
Okay. We are going to proceed with an addendum to the resiliency
Okay,
plan.
and we're gonna talk about that at MVP 2.0.
We're gonna incorporate findings.
Okay.
Oh, the goal is to have that done by the end of the year. It's gonna be clear, concise.
Perfect.
Your
Your goal or their goal?
our goal,
Our goal.
our goal. Yes. this
Not
goal.
MVP 2.
No, no. But I'm sure they would like that. Anything else? Let's see, anything else guys want to know about?
Good. And so we talked about water. Everybody's talking about water.
Water. Oh. Okay, well, that's it. All right. Next meeting, April 15th, and I have my to-do list. I'll be reaching out to those of you that I've gotten to touch it. Sarah.
Just circling back to last month's minutes, there was a question in there for Andy.
Sure, I'm sorry, what was it?
Um,
Apologies.
There was a question about a paragraph and Jane had asked you, is this accurate? So before I post them, can you take another look?
In the minutes.
In the-
Yeah.
I can send them to you.
We'll take a look, yeah, thank you.
I didn't realize,
Sorry,
Sarah, I skipped over something that you might have been wanting to talk about storm surge. Is there any, or, yeah, in terms of events? Yeah, you want to say anything with?
Yeah,
rush.
the March
Reschedule.
event got rescheduled due to ice storm, so it's now April 7th, and then April 27th is this film.
So I didn't miss that meeting. Then.
No.
That's awesome.
Sarah, will that next storm surge be like televised by any chance? I was gonna go to the one
Yeah.
that got canceled or the one that got postponed, and now I'm not gonna be there. Will there be a way I can watch it afterwards? How does that?
They're all recorded, they're all broadcast on NCM Hub, and then they give us the link and we post it.
Thank you.
April 7th. April 7th.
It was good for me because I couldn't make the third one. It was budget and finance. And I can go.
Post these besides email, we post them on the storm surge website and NCM Hub posts them, but not on the city's website.
All right. I think that's a wrap.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you, Jane.
Oh, bummer.
That's all.